Hi, I'm Matthew Fontaine. I'm a cross-connection control specialist at Red River College in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Today I'm going to walk you through testing an RP using a TK9A 3-valve. So the first thing you want to do when you get to go test the device is you want to notify, identify, which is identifying the unit itself, making sure that the model number and the serial numbers match. You want to inspect, make sure that there's nothing connected to the device that shouldn't be connected to the device. And then you also want to make sure that the location of the device. So once we've done all that, we are going to open up all the test cocks, bleed all the test cocks to remove any air, any debris that could be involved from sitting for a long period of time. So we're just going to open them up slightly, fully open, fully closed. We do that to all the three devices, or the test cocks I should say. And because I'm using a 3-valve, I want to make sure that test cock number 4 is left slightly open, allowing water to flow through the device. That is done so that we do not end up causing the relief valve to prematurely dump. So I'm hooking up my high side, hooking up my low side, test cock number 3 that is. So now that I have both of the hoses hooked up to test cock number 2 and test cock number 3, I'm going to open up both of those test cocks together to prevent my gauge from slamming from one side to the other. Make sure that all the air is bled from my gauge. And then I want to close my high side first. Then I want to close my low side. Then I want to close my vent. I want to reopen up my high side. And the differential gauge that I'm seeing here is saying that it's approximately 8.8, 8.9 PSID, or differential, which is basically reading the differential across my check valve number 1, or the spring rate of check valve number 1. But the first test that I want to do is I actually want to test my relief valve opening. The relief valve has to open up before this gauge hits 2 PSI. If it opens up before 2 PSI, the relief valve would pass. If it opens up below the 2 PSI, the relief valve would have failed. So to do that, I'm going to close test cock number 4. I'm going to make sure that my device is turned in the off position, so I'm going to close shutoff valve number 2. I am then going to slowly open up my bypass valve and allow my gauge to drop. As it's dropping, I'm going to put my hand underneath my relief valve, and I'm going to wait until I feel water dripping on the top of my hand, and I'm going to look at the gauge and I'm going to record that number. So I am now feeling water dripping on the top of my hand, and I can look at the differential gauge and I can read what that is stating. So I'm seeing a differential of 2.4 PSID, which is 0.4 PSI higher than the minimum requirement of my relief valve to open, which is 2 again. So my relief valve has actually passed. I want to reestablish pressure, so I'm going to close my vent. I am going to open up test cock number 4 again. That reestablishes pressure on my differential gauge. Now I'm going to wait 2 minutes, see if my differential gauge drops. If it does, I have to wait until it stops dropping before my 2-minute timer actually kicks in. So I've waited my 2 minutes. I'm looking at my gauge. My gauge is reading 7.8. The minimum spring rate that I'm allowed to have on an RP check valve number 1 is 5. I am above 5. That means check valve number 1 has passed, it's held tight, and it's closed. The next step that I want to do is I want to test my check valve number 2 against back pressure. So I hook up my vent hose slightly to test cock number 4. I will open up test cock number 4 slightly, allow some water to flow through. I am also going to slowly open up my vent at the top of my gauge, allow water to flow through my hose, so that way any air that's in there could escape. Tighten up my hose on test cock number 4. Open up, make sure that test cock number 4 is fully open. And then again, I'm looking to see if that gauge drops. If check valve number 2 can't hold against back pressure, it fails. That indication would be that my gauge would drop to 0. My relief valve would then open up at 2 psi again. So against back pressure, check valve number 2 has passed. I also need to check my spring rate across check valve number 2. So I'm going to close test cocks 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to depressurize my gauge by slowly opening up my vent hose connection and opening up all my valves. So I opened up my vent, my bypass, and my high side. I'm going to switch my hoses over. So my low side is then going to go to test cock number 4. My high side is then going to go to test cock number 3. And again, I am going to open up test cock number 2 and number 3 and number 4, and I'm going to do them together. So this way, again, I'm not slamming my gauge. With both of those test cocks fully open, I'm bleeding the air out of my gauge again. So now I'm going to close my high side, close my vent, close my bypass, and then I'm going to reopen up my high side again. Now my gauge dropped. I am now looking at 1 PSID. The minimum spring rate for check valve number 2 is 1 PSI. I'd wait my 2 minutes to make sure that my gauge doesn't drop. And if it doesn't drop below 1 PSI, check valve number 2 has also met the minimum requirement, therefore it passes. 2 minutes has gone by, my gauge hasn't dropped. I would say that check valve number 2 is passed against back pressure, and it's met the minimum requirement of the 1 PSID differential that is required. So our test is complete. We turn off test cock number 3 and number 4. We can open up the hoses and the vents on our gauge. We can disconnect them all. I want to bleed all my test cocks off before I put the unit back into service. So again, I open up test cock number 2, 3, and 4. Then I can put the device back into service by opening up shut-off valve number 2. The last test that we have to do is we actually have to record our line pressure. To do that, I have to use a separate gauge and a separate hose. So I've gotten my gauge, I've gotten my hose. I hook up my hose to test cock number 1. I open up test cock number 1. And then I look at the gauge and I want to record what that line pressure is. So according to this gauge, I'm seeing 55 PSI. That is my incoming pressure coming into my device. We record that down on our report along with our differential reading that we had on our check valve number 1, our relief valve, when our relief valve opened, and then again, that check valve number 2 is passed the test. Shut everything down again, depressurize the gauge. And that's how you test an RP using a 3-valve test procedure. From Red River College, I'm Matthew Fontaine.